My name is Lena Ortiz, and the last time I sat at my parents' dinner table, I learned exactly where I stood in this family. It happened in the middle of a quiet Sunday meal, the kind where the clinking of silverware fills the room because no one actually wants to talk. I was lifting my glass when my father leaned back in his chair, wiped his mouth with a paper napkin, and said almost casually, "Nobody here needs your money. Or you." For a moment, the room didn't move. The ceiling fan hummed. My mother kept cutting into her pot roast as if he'd commented on the weather. My sister Tessa smirked into her wine like she'd been waiting for someone else to say it first. Even her husband Dylan glanced at me with the comfortable boldness of a man who'd borrowed from me too many times to count. The heat rose beneath my skin, but on the surface, I didn't flinch. I had learned over years of practice how to hold myself still when someone aimed a truth or something they believed was a truth straight at me. So I smiled a small, practiced thing and set my glass down without a sound. I think they expected an argument or an apology, or at least a crack in my voice. They expected the same girl who always stepped in, always paid up, always smoothed things over. But their words didn't shatter me the way they hoped. They didn't even surprise me. What surprised me was how calm I felt, how quiet everything inside me became, as if the moment I'd been bracing for my entire life had finally arrived and I was ready. They thought my silence meant surrender. They had no idea it was the start of something else entirely. I didn't go straight home after that dinner. I drove around the neighborhood first, letting the cold wind slip in through the cracked window as if it could cool the sting under my ribs. The houses looked exactly as they had when I was a kid. Trimmed lawns, warm porch lights, the same old sedans in the driveways. Nothing had changed, which somehow made everything feel even smaller. When I finally got back to my apartment, the quiet greeted me like it always did. No voices, no footsteps. Just the refrigerator's hum and the faint smell of last night's peppermint tea. I stood in the dim kitchen, hands on the counter for steadiness, hearing my father's voice. "Nobody needs your money. Nobody needs you." It should have crushed me. Maybe once it would have, but now it felt more like a confirmation than a wound. I made tea out of habit and reminded myself that I'd spent my whole life being useful chauffeur, babysitter, emergency fund, emotional buffer. Being useful had felt like being wanted, and I hadn't realized how dangerous that illusion was. At my desk, I stared at the city lights, then at my laptop, my cursor hovering over the folder I'd avoided for years. All the ways I've paid for my family. I didn't open it. I just sat there feeling something new settle inside me, steady, undeniable. Their words hurt, but they also cleared the fog, and clarity demands action. I hadn't planned on digging into the past, but once the fog lifted, memories surfaced with a clarity I couldn't ignore. I leaned back in my chair, warm mug in hand, and let myself revisit the years that led me to that dinner table. I was 12 when I first realized my place in the Ortiz household was different. Tessa forgot her science project, and my mother pulled me from class to deliver it. I remember sprinting across the playground with styrofoam planets that weren't mine, while Tessa waited with the same entitled relief she still carries now. Back then, I told myself it was normal families helped each other. By 16, I was canceling plans so someone could stay with Abuela Rosa. I never minded. She was the rare person who saw me as more than a solution. She'd squeeze my hand and warn Mija, "You give too much. One day you'll see the cost." I pretended I didn't understand, but I did. In college, every paycheck vanished into just a little help. Tessa's car insurance, Mom's copay. Dylan joined later, fitting into the pattern effortlessly. He learned quickly that if he said something was urgent, I'd move without question. By the time I had a career, a used car, my own apartment, I should have known better. But guilt-built loyalty is stubborn. Whenever I tried to pull away, a new emergency would drag me back. Sitting at my desk, the city glowing below, I finally acknowledged none of this was accidental. It wasn't bad luck or doing my part. It was a system one I'd been holding up for decades, and for the first time I wondered what would happen if I let go. The next morning I woke with the same heaviness I'd carried the night before, but it wasn't the usual kind, the drained, resigned weight I'd grown used to. This felt sharper, more focused, like a thin line being drawn somewhere inside me. I moved through my kitchen in the soft early light, made coffee the way Abuela taught me, strong with just a touch of sugar, and when I sat down at my desk I knew exactly what I needed to do. I opened my laptop and created a new folder. This time, I didn't joke about it, even in my own head. I typed a simple title, Family Payments. The words looked oddly formal, too clean for what they represented. Still, once they appeared on the screen, something in me steadied. I started slowly pulling bank statements from the last few years, then older ones, receipts, screenshots of transfers, Zelle notes that read things like, "Just this once," or "I'll pay you back Friday." It was strange how seeing them all lined up made the truth louder. I'd always brushed each request off as isolated, manageable. but laid out in a timeline it looked less like help and more like erosion. Then I found something I hadn't meant to look for: a credit card under my name with transactions in a suburb I hadn't lived in for years. My breath caught when I saw the billing address. Tessa's house. I sat back staring at the screen, waiting for some kind of explanation to make itself known. None came. Another file revealed a personal loan attached to my credit report, one I didn't remember signing. I closed my eyes and saw Tessa months earlier pushing a stack of documents toward me while I was rushing out the door for work. She'd said they were for a rate comparison. I'd signed one page to allow the inquiry and left. I should have known better. As the evidence piled up, a chill spread through me that had nothing to do with anger. Anger I could understand. This was something colder. Recognition. The way a fraud analyst recognizes a pattern not as a possibility, but as a fact. My phone buzzed on the desk. A message preview from Jenna lit up. "Are you okay? You left early yesterday." I stared at it, realizing she was the only person who'd noticed. I typed back only one sentence. "Do you still have the number of that lawyer you mentioned?" I hit send before I could hesitate. Because once you finally see the truth, pretending you don't becomes impossible. Marcus Hall's office sat on the 7th floor of an unremarkable brick building, the kind most people passed without noticing. I preferred it that way. I wasn't ready for glossy professionalism. I needed something steadier. When I entered the small reception area, Marcus greeted me with a simple nod, calm, direct, no forced friendliness, and somehow that alone made it easier to breathe. We sat across a modest wooden table. No theatrics, no intimidating decor, just a man with a laptop, a notepad, and his full attention. He asked me to start from the beginning, and I did the dinners, the emergencies, the money transfers, the loan. I never meant to sign the credit card in my name, mailed to Tessa's address. I spoke quietly, but it felt like the words had been waiting years to come out. Marcus didn't interrupt, only asked necessary questions: dates, amounts, documentation, signatures. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "Lena, he said this goes beyond family borrowing. What you've described fits coerced debt and identity misuse. Some of it may qualify as criminal fraud." Hearing it stated so plainly made my chest tighten, not because I doubted it, but because I'd spent years insisting it couldn't be that serious. Families make mistakes, need help. They don't cross legal lines. Except sometimes they do. Marcus asked if I was ready for what would follow: a formal report, a possible investigation, frozen accounts, interviews, and the likelihood that my parents, my sister, and Dylan would all be contacted by law enforcement. He didn't sugarcoat anything, and I found myself grateful for that. I thought of my father's voice at dinner, my mother avoiding my eyes, Tessa's smirk, Dylan's quiet opportunism. Prepared. Maybe not. But ready, somewhere deep. The answer settled. "I want to move forward," I said. Marcus nodded. "Then we'll take it step by step." When I stepped outside, the winter air hit me cold clean. For the first time, it felt like oxygen. The investigation didn't start with sirens or dramatic phone calls. It began quietly, almost politely, with a notification from my bank that certain accounts connected to my information were being reviewed. I knew what that meant. Marcus had told me to expect it. Still, when I saw the email, a slow ripple of nerves worked its way through me. Not regret, just the weight of finally pushing a door I'd been leaning against my entire life. That evening, as I walked up the stairs to my apartment, my phone buzzed nonstop. Tessa was first. Her messages came in rapid bursts, each one more frantic than the last. "My card isn't working. What did you do? I have bills due. You need to fix this." There was no greeting, no concern, just panic rooted in inconvenience. I let the screen go dark. Then came Dylan calling instead of texting. His voice was sharp, irritated the way someone sounds when they believe they've been wronged. "You messing with our accounts? My paycheck went through, but I can't access half of it. If this is about the other night, you need to stop. Seriously." He didn't ask what was happening. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't even hesitate before assuming I should make his problems disappear. I hung up before he could finish. My mother was next. Multiple voicemails. Her tone swung wildly, first confused, then hurt, then dripping in guilt. "Lena, sweetheart, your sister said something's going on with the bank. You know we can't handle this stress. If you're upset about dinner, we can talk. But don't punish the whole family over a misunderstanding." She sniffled loudly, pausing for effect. "You know how your father gets when things like this happen? When things like this happen." As if this was another storm I was meant to shield them from, I set my phone face down on the counter and stood there for a long moment, letting the apartment's quiet settle around me again. This silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt deserved. The next morning, my father finally called. He didn't bother with small talk. "I got a notice from the bank," he said, voice tight. Someone's asking questions about our accounts. You know anything about that? I listened to the voicemail until the end, then deleted it. For decades, every crisis in that house had been mine to absorb. Now, for once, the consequences were finally finding their way back to where they belonged. 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended calm. At work, I kept my head down, finishing reports and answering emails with the same precision I always had. No one there knew that every evening I returned to a phone full of missed calls, guilt-laced messages, and the slow unraveling of a family that had never imagined I might one day step out of the role they'd written for me. When Marcus called one afternoon, I stepped into an empty conference room to take it. His tone was steady, almost clinical, but I could hear the shift beneath it. The task force reviewed your documentation. They're opening a formal investigation. They'll need additional statements from you soon. A quiet exhale slipped from me. And my family, they'll be contacted, likely sooner rather than later. He paused, then added gently, You don't have to be present when they are. The thought of not being there settled uneasily. For years I had stood in front of every problem for them. The idea of stepping back now felt unnatural, but necessary. That Sunday I drove to my parents' house. Not out of nostalgia, out of clarity. I wanted to see their faces when the weight shifted. The sky was a flat, heavy gray, matching the stillness in my chest as I walked up the cracked pathway I'd memorized since childhood. Inside the house looked unnervingly familiar. Same mismatched tablecloth, same fake floral centerpiece, same sense of everyone avoiding what mattered. My mother was stirring gravy. My father sat stiffly at the head of the table. Tessa scrolled through her phone. Dylan lounged back, beer in hand, pretending to be relaxed. I set my coat over the back of my old chair, but didn't sit. Tessa looked up first, annoyed. So you finally show up. Good. We need to talk. My father cleared his throat, trying for authority. Whatever you reported, you're going to call and fix it. This has gone far enough. I met his eyes steadily. I didn't report anything I can't prove. A flicker of something fear maybe passed across his face. My mother wiped her hands on a towel, stepping forward. Lena, don't do this. Whatever happened, we can handle it privately. Before I could respond, a sharp, measured knock broke through the room. 3 firm hits. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Everyone froze. My father frowned, standing slowly. Who the hell? You should get that, I said softly. He opened the door. 2 investigators stood on the porch, badges visible. Good afternoon, one said. We're looking for Richard and Marlene Ortiz, Tessa Ortiz Morris, and Dylan Morris. The room fell silent, suspended in a single fragile breath, and I knew the moment had finally arrived. My father didn't speak at first. He just stood there, framed by the doorway, his mouth slightly open as Detective Price and Agent Coleman stepped inside. My mother's hands trembled around the dish towel. Tessa's phone slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. Dylan straightened in his chair as if preparing for a fight he couldn't possibly win. Mr. and Mrs. Ortiz. Ms. Ortiz Morris. Mr. Morris. Agent Coleman set her voice steady. We're here in connection with an ongoing investigation regarding coerced debt, identity, misuse, and financial exploitation. We'll need to ask you some questions. My mother shook her head, stepping forward with a brittle smile. There must be some mistake. We don't have problems like that. We're a family. Detective Price gave her a sympathetic but unmoved look. Ma'am, family disputes don't override the law. Tessa whipped toward me, eyes wide and furious. What did you do? Are you seriously letting them ruin our lives over a few accounts? Her words hit the air like cold rain, sharp, familiar, undeserved. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped hiding what you did. Dylan barked out a humorless laugh. We're your family. You don't call the cops on family. I met his gaze, unblinking. You stopped being family when you treated me like a resource. My mother reached for my arm, pleading now, her voice wobbling. Lena, sweetheart, please tell them we didn't mean anything. Tell them we can fix this. I eased my arm away gently. I spent my whole life fixing things for this house. This time you'll have to answer for yourselves. The investigators began their questions, and I didn't need to hear the answers. The truth was already written in years of withdrawn balances, forged signatures, and guilt disguised as affection. I picked up my coat. My father finally found his voice. If you walk out that door, he said, pointing at me with a shaking hand, don't bother coming back. There it was, the sentence that once held me hostage. Now it sounded tired, almost hollow. I looked at him. Really looked. I left a long time ago, I said quietly. You're just noticing now. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Not a slam. Outside, the winter air felt colder than before, but cleaner too, like breathing after years underwater. 3 weeks later, I signed a lease for a small house in a neighboring state not far from work. A place that didn't echo with guilt. A place where silence meant peace, not punishment. Some nights I sit by the window with a cup of peppermint tea, watching the street lamps flicker against the dark. I think about that dinner table, the words meant to break me and how they ended up setting me free. If any part of my story feels familiar to you, if you've ever been used, dismissed, or told you were too sensitive, I want you to know something. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal. It's survival. And sometimes walking away is the most honest kind of love you can give yourself.